Optimal stopping point. What is an optimal stopping point? An optimal stopping point is the point within a certain process, task, or act during which you should consider stopping and moving on to a different task for efficiency and time management purposes. It's basically a time management concept adjacent or similar to the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule, designed to maximize your efficiency and time allocated to specific types of tasks based on also their urgency and importance and priority, really. So basically the optimal stopping point will determine how to use your time most efficiently across a variety of tasks in your day. So it'll also allow you to complete more tasks within any given period. Okay, so it's really an efficiency booster, and it's helped me a lot just in my way of thinking and organizing myself and organizing my tasks, planning my whole week, and things like that. So what I've noticed first is where in the day to put certain types of tasks. What you want to do, if you're like most people, is you want to put your most important tasks as early on as possible in your day. You want your most important tasks to be in the morning. Most people function better in the morning. If you are a night owl and you tell me that I only turn on, in terms of my intellectualness or functionality or creativity or technical abilities past 10 p.m. until 3 in the morning, that's a whole other ballgame. But fewer people are like that. But just know where and when you function at your best, and you should be plugging in all the tasks that require the most struggle, okay, the most creativity, the most effort, the heaviest pulling. Pretend it's like you have to sort of choose where to exercise in the day, where your body is warmed up, refreshed, caffeinated, blah blah blah. Okay, so you have to pick a good part of your day for every different type of task. So again, morning for me, I'll line up the tasks that are really heavy lifting. Okay, so responding to complex inquiries that are technical from my team, responding to any time sensitive, high level and important emails. Okay, doing basically anything that requires me to wear the hat that I would struggle the most wearing. So anything to do with accounting, all my accounting bookkeeping meetings, I don't schedule them in the afternoon because I know that that part of my brain starts to fall asleep after about 2-3 p.m. That's it. I'm totally done after that. So for that part of the day is good for tasks that are either less important, very redundant, so you're doing the same thing over and over again, or any kind of task that's kind of like lower level in that it's just not something that's the biggest priority. Okay, and especially because it's also later in the day, so it's something that's not urgent. So anything to do with like admin stuff, I'll do all my admin work, paper pushing, that kind of thing in the afternoon. So that's number one. So figuring out where in the day to put different types of tasks. This is a huge efficiency booster if you haven't already done it. The next thing you want to do is you want to group in order, in sequential order, and batch. Okay, it's called batch tasking. You want to put together tasks of the same kind. So your calendar shouldn't look like 20 minutes of bookkeeping here, 20 minutes of sales calls here, 20 minutes of team here, 20 minutes of, no. It should be like, okay, I'm going to do this for 2 hours for a nice block of time. And then the next 2 hour or 3 hour period, this is what I'm going to be doing. And then in the afternoon, I have a nice chunk after lunch between 1 and 3 o'clock. I'm going to do this, etc., etc. So that's how you should do it. So batch tasking. Now, here's where it gets really next level. So now that you know when to do what's missing? Can anyone tell me? The how you're going to do the task. So how much time are you going to spend on these types of tasks that you have now nicely, neatly mapped out into your calendar, right? So how much time is too much time? Well, depends how busy you are. If you're starting and you have one project in the pipe and you need this project to be like the best, so polished that whoever you show this project to or this result to, you're going to be getting a full-on, okay, the cops are after me. No, they're after someone else. Okay, good. Look, you can still video while you drive. That's fantastic. So yeah, basically you want to make freaking sure that you're spending the right amount of time on each task, right? So if you're doing something that's critical, that's of high importance, you want to allocate a pretty good, let's just call it a pretty good amount of time, okay? We'll call it a PAM or a PGAM. Oh, they didn't let the cops through, so the cops had to do a UE and go the other way. That's great. So that's it. So importance is a key factor on how well, so like if it's a first impression to a client that you know is sitting there looking for any excuse not to hire you, you're going to want to take that email and you're going to want to stick that into a spell checker or have AI proof it or have your content writer proof it or just double check it or triple check it or email to someone and have them check it, which is probably the least efficient. But anyway, the idea is if you're going to spend more time or be less efficient about your time, there needs to be a justification. So the only justification that you should spend more time on something is if that something is higher priority, more urgent, more important, or just like by nature requires more time, right? Like I've never sat down and spent, under, 2 or 3 hours doing my like quarterly, admin work. Like there's no way I can put 30 minutes into my calendar and expect that I'm going to get that done. Okay, it's not going to happen. So you have to be realistic about that, and that goes into goal setting. So if you don't know what the 80-20 rule is, the Pareto principle, and if you don't know how to set proper goals to make them smart, okay, they're smart objectives, I have videos on exactly what that is in the description, so check those out. But yeah, so getting back to just sort of, usage of your time, you have priority, urgency, and then just sort of type. Okay, so we'll call it category of task. Okay, so basically, if a task has a minimum time requirement, you have to allocate enough time to get it done. Okay, even if it's not super important or super high priority, if you know that it takes X amount of time to get done, you have to allocate that amount of time. It's that simple. So the other element is just the qualitative element. Okay, so how high quality does whatever you're working on right now need to be? How much detail do you need to put into this thing? If you're responding to an email, can you just hit reply and write done to the client? Like, is that gonna work? Maybe if it's a client that you've known for 10, 15 years, but if it's a new client and they're just getting warmed up and they've just been integrated into your company, you want hello, monsieur, madame, whatever, friendly greeting. I hope you had a nice weekend. Our team and I managed to complete your XYZ deliverable, and here's a link to all the blah 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 blah, whatever, reporting or whatever. So the amount of detail as well depends on circumstantial elements. So now we're moving from the type of task and the nature of like how high priority and how important it is and what type of task it is, we're now moving into things that are circumstantial. So, what are the circumstances of these specific tasks now that have been entered into your calendar? Okay, so you have to call back a client. Well, who is this client? Is this a client that is super high maintenance and is like a detail-oriented fiend and needs a 6-page report? Or is this a client that if you tell them that they're number one on Google for X keyword and send them one sentence, they're going to be okay with that? Or do they need a 6-page PowerPoint? Okay, so context is important as to attach to the type, urgency, and priority, which are two different things. Okay, so in our project management system, for example, we have a star rating that we can assign to a client based on how high priority, just generally, okay, that client is, how important, let's say, okay, not urgent, but like how important is this client? And this often depends on, how loyal this client has been with us, if they're a regular client of ours, how big the client is, okay, their account size with us, so their advertising, their marketing spend, essentially. And the other element is just generally, generally how valuable they are. So we assign, a star rating based on also the client's behavior. So is this a client that we want to keep, or is this a client that we're trying to not necessarily get rid of, but let's just say it falls into the category of higher maintenance? Okay, so this is a client that has excessive demands, is hard to please. It's sort of like a client that we've downgraded. Like, let's just put it this way. If somebody came up to me and was like, look, gun to your head, today you have to get rid of 3 clients, I would know exactly who those clients are. I wouldn't just be like, yeah, okay, let's pick this one and that one. I'd be like, no. These are the clients that we need to get rid of, and here's why. Okay, so I'd be able to do that. And it's not often that it happens that we want, or that we actually act on it and let's call it proactively disengage with a client. That's a rare thing, okay? It's rare, but it has happened, and it can happen. And there's justifications to it. Like, why would you get rid of a client? Well, they're never satisfied. A. 2, like, even when you do a great job, they're never satisfied. Like, if you took the job you did for them and you showed it to any other client, they would be doing backflips, cartwheels, and jumping jacks, and jumping up and down with a big smile, throwing dollar bills at you. But this client, you do that for them, you deliver ahead of time, you deliver a long-term solution, and you deliver results in 2 months, and they're still complaining. This is the client where you start to pack your bags and move on to another client, because they're going to take the same resources of 3 clients to get to the same space as just getting one other client on board. So it's going to be a very profitable transaction for you to get rid of that client and replace them with 1, 2, or 3 other clients of the same, magnitude or effect in your business. So you want to get rid of a client because they are too high maintenance, or they're a penny pincher. Okay, so no matter what it is that you send them an invoice for, there's always like them calling you and screaming, even though it's something, let's just say, you've already agreed to and is clear and is written in the contract and this and that. They're putting up a fuss every time, and it happens like where, to the point where I'm like afraid to build. So if I get to a point where I'm afraid to hit the send button to send an invoice to a client, this is not good. This means that this is a penny pinching client. So if they're a penny pincher, nickel and dimer, whatever you want to call it, cheap, frugal, which is the polite word, by the way, for cheap, if you didn't know that. So if they're that type of client, then they're on our axe list. Now, the other type of client that you would potentially consider getting rid of is just, how can you put this? It's a client who is just bad at communication or very unavailable. Okay, if it's a consulting client, now there is there are some times where we have some clients that are sort of MIA or just very relaxed and not expecting to always be, getting 50 emails a month from us or any kind of reporting at all. And they're very relaxed and they're not, like, talk to me. But if they're a client that is either not engaging at all, okay, and they don't really talk to you, they never go back and forth with you, and they're just unavailable for basic information gathering and getting some of the assets that you need to work, or getting approvals, or this is challenging, okay? It creates problems. So if they're either not responsive enough or they're too responsive, that's another problem. So we had one client, okay, and if you're watching this, you know who you are. We got 70, I believe it's 73 emails from this client in a single day. In one day, 73 emails. That's like time to like refresh your, like maintain your inbox quota because you have no more storage left in your email. Or that's how many emails I would get from like all my clients combined, like in like a month, So, too much or too little communication is also a reason why you would consider getting rid of a client, okay? So prioritizing the situation or the client itself and just sort of evaluating the relativity of who this task is getting done for is extremely important, okay? So who are you doing this task for? What's the context? What is actually needs to get done specifically for this person or this client or this company or this industry or this whatever specific, okay? Like what specifically needs to get done this time around for this task that I'm doing? Well, it's a giant wasp. Luckily, it's outside the window. So yeah, so that's what you need to pay attention to as your number 3 criteria here in your time management. Very, very important. Optimal stopping point. So when in the task should you stop? Well, basically, whenever you reach a point where it's done to the basic mandate. So whatever it is that you've guaranteed, let's say the client in writing, once you reach that level and it's at a level where you know that it has been quality controlled enough for this particular circumstance and this particular industry and this particular client, okay, the nature of the client, if they're super analytical, if they're super, they don't really care about the technical, so whatever it is, as long as it's done to that standard and meets that like sort of minimum level of criteria where you can put a checkbox and not worry that half the job hasn't been done or like parts of it will affect the actual end result significantly, like notably, then you should move on to your next task. You should be ready to pack your bags and be like, all right, I'm gonna get to put a nice little check or a little happy face or whatever and move on to your next list item on your list of tasks that you've laid out. Similar types of tasks, right? You batch them in your calendar. So you've gone from number 1 to number 2 to number 3. And by using this method and having a point at which it makes perfect sense for you to be like, all right, I could spend another 30 minutes on this, but it's really not going to do anything. Not for me, not for the client, and it's not going to do anything good or bad, okay? Good or bad. It's not going to have, I'm not losing a huge upside, and I'm not risking having any kind of significant downside, okay? So there's no material effect here. If I were to spend this extra 30 minutes here, I'm going to take that 30 minutes and roll it right into my next task. Optimal stopping point. I hope it was a very educational moment for you. If you liked any of the tips in this video, like this video, subscribe, share, and I will love you forever and see you in the next one.